G'day everyone and welcome to the Pokestraya YouTube channel. It's Jordan here and we are doing a deck profile today for a Rainbow Road deck. I actually took this to a local tournament yesterday. I came first. It was only a small locals tournament, 3 rounds, best of 3. I 2-0'd everything and finished first. I had a lot of good fun with this deck. This is the build I'm currently testing for Rainbow Road. I've messed around with this deck quite a bit. Tried a couple of different tech cards in it. I really do like this build the most out of what I've tested, so I thought I'd show it off for you guys today and show what I played on the weekend and kind of what works, what doesn't, what I like about the deck, and we'll talk about the deck as we go. So the matchups were Mega Scizor, Greninja, and Superior, so 2-0 everything. So we're going to get started here. So this deck revolves around this Xerneas right here, with the Rainbow Force attack, which does 10 damage and 30 more for each of your Pokemon on your bench with different types. So the idea is to just kind of have, just trying to focus it here, just try to have as many Pokemon on the bench as you need with different types, so you can hit a lot of damage for this Rainbow Force. This was an okay deck to begin with, then we got the dual type Pokemon, and now I think this deck's probably my pick for the best deck in the format. I think it's definitely a contender for best deck in the format. I don't think this deck has got a bad matchup at all. There are a couple of iffy matchups, but I think overall it does have a lot of good matchups. So we're going to play the 4 Rainbow Force Xerneas. I've tested this with Xerneas Xerneas. You don't need it at all. You'll find there's better ways to accelerate energy with this deck, and this is pretty much your only attacker, so you really want to have access to all of these as much as you need of these guys. They are only one prize, non-EX attackers as well, so they're only going to be dropping 1 prize, whilst hopefully taking 2 in the process. So this is why I really like this deck. I like any deck that can really focus on non-EX attackers, and this Xerneas is probably the best one in the format at the moment. Along with things like Vespiquen is still very good. So we're going to be playing 4 of the Xerneas. Next up, we're going to be playing a 2-1 line of Galvantula. Now, Galvantula is one of these dual-type Pokemon that we've got in Steam Siege. It's probably one of the better dual types. You could play things like Bishop in here as well. I only like playing a stage 1 in here. My choice was Galvantula because I think it's the better of the stage 1 dual type Pokemon. So it's got the double thread attack, which does 30 damage to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. You also apply weakness and resistance to the bench Pokemon. The reason I like this one is because it can pretty much take 4 prizes in 2 turns. Of course, we all know Shaymin EX is probably the most popular card in the format at the moment. Double Thread can do 60 damage to 2 Shaymins on the bench, potentially setting up for a 4 prize turn for the next turn, if Galvantula can attack once again, or later in the game. 2-1 lines you don't really see too often. I think with Rainbow Road it's really only necessary, like you don't need to go any more than this 2-1 line. Just try and get this focused a little bit better. It's a lightning grass type, so that's fine. Grass is also very good. Can 2-shot Manaphy EX if it's sitting on the bench. Joltik's also very good in here because it does have free retreat, so if you start with Joltik, it's not too bad, because you can just retreat out. And other than that, it's really just here to sit on the bench and kind of just beef up the Xerneas attacks. Of course, being dual type, it pretty much adds 60 damage to that attack, but it's pretty much the only other Pokemon you're ever going to attack with it in this deck, unless you want to Sky Return with a Shaymin. Next up, we're going to play 1 Regirock promo. A card I like in here very much, and it doesn't see too much play in this deck. I think Safeguard Carbink is seeing a lot more play for a potential fighting type Pokemon. I really like this guy in here. Because of the barrier trait, it can't be affected by any training cards your opponent plays that would normally affect a Pokemon, such as things like Lysander and Crushing Hammer and Ting Flagrant. Enhanced Hammer even just don't affect this Regirock, so I can feel confident putting energies onto this guy, putting my experience shares onto this guy, and never having to worry about it being Lysander and knocked out. I can potentially set up for a Ninja Boy play with this guy later in the game, to set up another Xerneas, and have this guy pretty much powered up the entire game and just wait until I need it for a Ninja Boy into a Xerneas. That's why I like it in here. It's also just another non-EX basic Pokemon that can sit in your bench and you never really have to worry about being Lysandered with. The only downside is when you start with this guy, because it means you have to commit a Float Stone to him to get out of the active spot, which sucks, or just retreat him some other way. There is one other way we can retreat this guy. that's not losing 3 energies. But it does suck starting with this guy. It happened to me once. It wasn't too bad though, because my opponent really didn't have much going either. That was the Greninja matchup. So I'm like, I've got a couple of turns to get this Regirock out of the active spot. That's it for the non-EX Pokemon. So we do play 6 EXs in this deck as well, starting with Hooper. I think if you're going to be playing a heavy EX count for this deck, Hooper is definitely the best way to go. You could also play a Mew in here. Mew's the other Pokemon I've seen being played with this deck. Which is one of the reasons why I like this Rainbow Road deck so much, is there's so much variety with the deck, and so many different cards you can play with the deck, which I very much like about the deck. I'm going to be playing more EXs in my list, so Hooper seemed like the best choice for me. If you can get a Hooper first turn, you're pretty much set for the game. And it's very easy to get a Hooper first turn as well, because it can get you any of these EX Pokemon here. We've got 5 that we can grab. So we're going to be playing 2 Volcanion EX. I know a lot of people are playing this at 1 at the moment. I actually like having 2 personally. Just because I felt like if you ever prize this Volcanion, you are going to be a bit behind, especially if you are struggling to get the Galvantula down. It can happen where you're just not able to find the Joltik. And Volcanion is just so much easier to get through Hooper, so if you're only playing 1 and you've prized it, that can suck a lot. It can really put you behind quite a bit if you're not able to find this Volcanion. Again, this is a dual-type Pokemon, and it's a basic dual-type Pokemon, which is the best thing about it. And it's an EX, so Hooper can grab it. I really like this card in here. It's probably my favorite card in this deck, just because it is the basic dual-type Pokemon, which is always going to be good for this deck, I think. If we ever get any more basic dual-types, which I think there are possibly some coming out, I don't know. I don't know if Evolutions is having dual types. I honestly can't for the life of me remember. But yeah, this Volcanion is just really nice, just because it's a basic dual type. 3 retreat cost, which sucks. So we do have to play things like Float Zone in this deck, but there's no Tool Scrapper in the format, no way of removing tools, so it doesn't matter too much. We can afford to play down Float Zones. 2 Shaman EX. Best non-supporter draw support in the game. Setup's really good. There's no point playing Octillery with this deck because we're already playing the Volcanion, so we've already got Water type covered. And Shaman's just quicker, it's just better. So if you don't have Shamans, get yourself some Shamans, because you pretty much need them for pretty much any deck in this format. It's the best card in the format. Yeah, that's pretty much Shaman. Just draw until you have 6. You can also Sky Return with this guy if you need to. Not many cases where you'll need to, but sometimes you like to, or you have to. Like an Enter 1, just put a DC onto this guy, and you can set a Sky Return and then set up next turn if they don't Hex. And finally for Pokemon, we play 1 Flygon EX, which is a card that a lot of people probably might not have seen. This is a promo EX Pokemon that came in a Flygon EX box. It's got a very nice ability, Voice of the Sands. So once during your turn before you attack, you can essentially force your opponent to switch their active Pokemon with one of their benched Pokemon. So this is kind of like Escape Rope and Lysander. It's really good in here. If Xerneas gets knocked down, you've got this on the bench with a Float Stone on it. You can promote this into the active spot to begin with, and if your opponent's got something on the bench or something in the active that you don't want to attack in, say they've got like an Evil Toll from XY in the active spot and you'd rather take 2 prizes and on their bench is just filled with EX Pokemon, you can Voice of the Sands to bring up the EXs and start to knock them out to take more prizes. Also, if your opponent's only got 1 bench Pokemon, you can kind of force them into a tough spot where they've really got to promote that only Pokemon that they've got on the bench. Also, it's just really good to sometimes force your opponent to have to bring up something else, especially when they don't want to or they don't have a way out of it. And Flygon EX, again, just a basic EX Pokemon that we can grab with Hooper, Dragon type as well, so it does add to the Xerneas attack. It's my favorite Dragon type that I could play into this deck. That space is really open for anything that you want to test though. I did try Giratina EX just for the Megas, but I felt like Xerneas just pretty much knocks them out anyway, so you don't really ever need to stall. And there wasn't any other circumstances where I needed Giratina. But that spot is definitely open to whatever you want to test. That's probably the one card I would remove from the Pokemon. But I actually really like having it in here. I would recommend you try it out because it's very good in this deck. Next up for supporters, we play 3 Professor Sycamore. The reason I play 3 is because I felt like if I played more than 3, as of 3, I'm already discarding too many resources that I don't like to discard. And I felt like if I was going to be playing 4, there was just going to be too many circumstances where I'm going to need to discard things like experience shares before I get to play them. I play a lot of ways of getting out the Sycamore, so I don't think 4 was necessary. And 3's been working fine for me. I haven't really missed the 4th, so that's why we play 3. I just felt like if we play 4, we're going to find ourselves in too many awkward circumstances where we just need to discard cards when we don't really have to or want to. 2N, I would actually play this at 3, but I think Rainbow Road takes a lot of quick prizes and a lot of early prizes. So when you get to a position where you're at 3 prizes left and your opponent's at 6, you don't really want to be ending under those circumstances, just because you're not really helping yourself and you're just benefiting your opponent. N is my favorite card to play in the first and second turns with this deck, because I think it keeps a lot of your resources in the deck and also refreshes your hand as well. It's just a very good card as well. Second best draw support in the game behind Sycamore. Then we play 6 one-of supporters, which is quite a lot. So we're going to go through these. We can play 1 Lysander, just basic. I would play 2 in here if I had the space. I don't really miss a second one. I think 1 is fine as is. I haven't really found a circumstances where I need the second. Whenever I've needed Lysander, I've always been able to find it. 1 Hex Maniac, just a good card. Shuts off things like Volcanion. Just shuts off explosive first turns by pretty much any deck in the format. A lot of big mega Pokemon, like if you're going up against Mewtwo or Rayquaza, just play a Hex Maniac, there goes their Hooper, there goes their Shaman, there goes their setup. It's just a really good card. We've got room so we can play it. It's just, Hex Maniac's just such a good card on the first turn. So is this card right here, and that's Pokemon Fan Club. Pokemon Fan Club is a card that got recommended to me by another player who knows who they are. Thank you for the recommendation. I actually wasn't too sure how I felt about Pokemon Fan Club. The idea with Fan Club is you play this on your first turn and get yourself a Xerneas and a Hooper, and then you're pretty much set up from there. Because with that Hooper, you can grab yourself a Volcanion, Flygon, Shaman. You've already got the Xerneas down. Then you can pretty much go from there and get really whatever you need. It's such an explosive first turn card to get. I would try and up this to 2 if I could find space for a second, because I actually do like having this card on the first turn. It's very situational, really, what you want to play on your first turn. Sometimes you can afford to play this, so you don't really have to Hex. Sometimes you just want to end to better your chances of drawing into some better cards. But this Fan Club is very good first turn, and even late game as well. I think if you don't build this deck around being able to recover from Parallel City or being able to recover from like something that can disrupt your setup, then you're probably going to lose. This deck doesn't really care too much about a Giratina EX Parallel City drop, because we just hit Giratina for a knockout anyway. Even with the Parallel City down, we're still hitting for a knockout, especially if you've still got Volcanion down. So Pokemon Fan Club, it's just very good. If you get a Parallel City dropped on you, you can Super Rod, shuffle back in the Hooper, Fan Club, grab Hooper, you're good to go from there. That's really why the Fan Club's such a great card in here. And another card that was recommended to me by another player was Teammates, which I enjoy in here as well. I think it helps a lot, especially, again, things like Parallel City being dropped, you can easily recover from it. Also, this just allows you to easily set up multiple Xerneas as well. When one gets knocked out, you can search yourself for another one and something like an experience share. So when the active one gets knocked out, you can keep the energy on board, and you can do this multiple times in a row if you've got the DCEs. I really like this Teammates in here, just being able to find whatever you need when a Xerneas goes down. 120 HP is not very hard to hit for, so Xerneas does get knocked out pretty easily, and Teammates is just good recovery for that. Next up, we're going to play 1 Ninja Boy. So I did talk about Ninja Boy a bit earlier on with the Regirock. Regirock's not the only circumstances where you want to use this. Sometimes you might only have like your Volcanion EX on the bench. You can still put an experience share onto that so you can Ninja Boy later in the game. Ninja Boy is just such a good card, especially in this deck. I think it can really surprise your opponent with this Ninja Boy and take games through that. Again, just setting things up on the bench doesn't seem so silly with Ninja Boy in the format, and I think Ninja Boy is definitely one of the best cards in the format. I think it's very underestimated and a very good card. Finally, for supporters was a card that I put in last minute. I took an escape rip out for this, and that is 1 Olympia, and I love this card in this deck. Just about every game I probably played the Olympia. It's just such a good card to have. if your opponent tries to Lysander up something and try and stall you out. A lot of the big Pokemon in this deck do have heavy retreat costs. The Regirock, Hooper, Volcanion, and Flygon all have above 2. Even Xerneas has above 2 retreat cost, but you don't really want to be attaching a DC and retreating. We only play 2 Floatstone in here, so I felt like we needed a solid switching option. So I tested with the Escape Rope. It was okay, but there was still games where you would Sycamore away the Escape Rope. Olympia just allows you to reuse it so many times. And also healing 30 damage is very good whilst you do this. There are a couple of things. Oblivion Wing Eviltoll springs to mind. Volcanion springs to mind. If they steam up once, hit you for 50 or whatever, then you Olympia, heal 30 of that damage, and get to switch out as well. It's very good. And if your opponent just tries to Lysander you late game, you've got this in your discard pile, just VS Seeker for Olympia, and get out of the active. It's a very good card. Next up, we're going to play some other training cards for this deck. We're going to be playing 4 VS Seekers. Sorry for that, little jump in the recording there. The camera stopped recording for whatever reason. So yeah, 4 VS Seekers, pretty standard in just about anything, just helps us get back any supporters that we need. Don't really need to talk about that too much. It's a pretty standard card for pretty much any deck in the standard format now. Moving on, we're going to be playing 4 Ultra Balls. Again, just such a standard card in Pokemon at the moment for the standard format, and even expanded. These cards are just needed in pretty much anything. 4 VS Seeker 4 Ultra Ball is pretty much the standard for Pokemon decks at the moment. There's nothing really better than them. They make their way into pretty much any deck. 4 Ultra Balls is great. Helps you get Hooper consistently. Hooper is what we aim for first turn. Also just being able to lower our hand size to use Shaman to draw a lot of cards. Also just finding Xerneas. Pretty much anything that you need Ultra Ball can get. Played 4 Trainer's Mail in here. I chose to go 4 Trainer's Mail just to kind of boost the consistency of the deck. You can drop this, try and find room for something like Level Ball to find the Joltik. I don't really see too much of a point for that. I can also get Galvantula. If you feel like you need to find yourself the Joltik and Galvantula easier, then definitely do that. I prefer playing 4 Trainer's Mail. It makes playing things like only 3 Sycamore viable, because we're easily able to get them with these Trainer's Mails. Of course, playing 4 does also increase the chance of also then Trainer's Mailing and finding ourselves a Trainer's Mail. However, that's not too big of an issue. Usually we'll be able to find another trainer card. Being able to find out one of supporters is also very crucial. So this Trainer's Mails can help us do that, and that's why we play 4 of them. Next up, we play kind of a controversial card for this deck, and that is 2 Max Elixir. I know a lot of people don't like Max Elixir in this deck and they prefer Experience Share. I also do play Experience Share in this deck. But I also very much like Max Elixir. It can allow for a turn 1 Rainbow Force, which is what I did against Mega Sizzle, able to knock out a Sizzle before it became a Mega, which is also always very good. First turn knockouts are always going to be something good in Pokemon, so if you're able to achieve that, that's very good. Max Elixirs also just help later game. If you're able to Super Rod back in some energies and hit one of these Max Elixirs, it makes things like missing a Xerneas or missing an energy or not having experience share down not too bad, because you can recover through these Max Elixirs. Can also mean that in a turn you've gotten a Xerneas with an experience share, you get the energy from the active, attach, and then Max Elixir, and there's 3 more energies onto the board that you can use for another Xerneas. So you play 2 Max Elixirs. I don't really feel like I need more than that. I think 2's done actually quite well, and I very much enjoy having 2 in here. 2 Super Rod as well, just because I think there's a lot of Parallel City going around to counter Mega Rayquaza. And also, just losing cards from the bench hurts. As I said, pretty much our only attacker is the 4 Xerneas. When you lose 4 of them, and if they've got 4 Fairy Energies on them as well, you're losing 8 cards that you don't want to really lose, so we have to play these Super Rods to get them back. I don't think you'd ever need more than 2. I would probably test this when Karen is legal. I think Karen's actually legal at the moment. We'll have to check that. I actually don't even think Karen's really needed in this deck. I think Super Rod is fine, especially with the cards like Hooper and Teammates and Pokemon Fan Club as well. I don't think Karen's really needed in this deck at all. For the tool cards, we play 3 Experience Share. I'm testing 3 at the moment, and I've actually really enjoyed it. I think in my build in particular with that Regirock, there are more things that I feel like I need to have this experience share on. So I play 3. I know I've seen lists that only play 2, which is fine. If you feel like you only need 2, then go for it. There is those awkward circumstances where you end up discarding these because of a Sycamore, which it doesn't matter too much, I suppose. It's nice to try and keep them in deck if you can. Obviously, you never really know too much what's going to be in your hand when you Sycamore. But yeah, I found just being able to put these onto other things, I think my deck's focused around being able to Ninja Boy late game with that Regirock, even being able to Ninja Boy late game in general, just to kind of save ourselves and get us another Xerneas. So that's why I like having 3 experience share. It makes putting experience share into other things not so bad as well. That's why we do play 3, just because I feel like if I have to, it's a nice tool card to put onto a Shaman. Shaman's only got 1 retreat cost, you don't really need a float stone onto it. So if you've got it in hand and nothing to put it onto, it's still worth playing, just because we do play that Ninja Boy, and I like having 3 in here. Next we play 2 float stone. You can swap this if you want. If you want 3 float stone, 2 EXP share, that's fine. I actually really only felt the need for 2 float stones, especially with Olympia in the deck. I played this with 3 float stones and no other retreating methods. Then I dropped 1 for an escape rope, and then I dropped the escape rope for the Olympia. I found 2's been fine. I've really hit them when I needed them. If not, I've had the Olympia there. So if you want, you can up this to 3. I think 2's fine, however. Obviously the float stones kind of want to go into that Flygon. Also, things like Volcanion do have a heavy retreat cost. It's nice to just kind of keep them in hand for when you need them. Then we play 3 Skyfields. This is more of a luxury card, I think. I think Rainbow Road can really get by without having this Skyfield down with the dual types in the format. 6 Pokemon, I believe it is, will hit for 190, so you don't really need anything else other than that. 190 is pretty much enough to knock out most things. With a Volcanion and 4 other bench Pokemon, you're hitting for that. If you want to start hitting Megas with a Volcanion, Galvantula, 3 other Pokemon down, you're hitting for, what's that, 150, so 250, so that's pretty much enough to knock out anything. So Skyfield, though, is still very nice. Just means you can have more things on the bench, but it doesn't hurt if this card isn't out there. There's ways to recover from it. It's just more of a nice card to have, because it can help make things a little easier for you, but doesn't suck if you become under Giratina Lock or anything. It doesn't really matter. I think 3 Skyfield is fine. And finally, for the energies, we are playing 4 DCs, because we need to attack with Rainbow Force as quick as possible, and DC is the main way of doing that. And 7 Fairy Energies. I know a lot of people playing about 8 if they're playing a max elixir build. I only play 2 elixirs, so I don't expect to hit them all the time. They're more of just kind of a luxury card for me. If I can hit them, that's great. And I actually haven't really missed too many with the 7 energies, because I usually get the elixirs quite early. Even late game, when you've got 2 super rods, you can get back energy that you've lost and then elixir, and it's not too bad. I think this energy count's been fine for me from what I've tested so far. Haven't really run into any big problems with it at all. And that is my build for Rainbow Road. Currently, again, we are still kind of testing. A lot of decks still being tested for. Evolutions is coming out. I don't know how much the deck changes. I doubt it'll change much. I don't think there's really any cards that get added to Rainbow Road. Possibly Brock's Guts, but that's about it. I can't think of really any cards off the top of my head that I'd add to this deck. I enjoy this deck how it is, but again, still testing, so there might be some other Pokemon that come out before the season properly starts that might change my mind of a couple of cards in this deck, but at the moment I'm really enjoying this list and really enjoying the deck. I think it's probably the best deck in Standard, if not definitely a top contender for the best deck in Standard. That's all I got time for you today, guys. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the Pokestraya YouTube channel, and head over to our Facebook page and give us a like there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.